Hello, and welcome to our latest episode of Session Share, the Coaches Podcast. My name's Craig Birtwhistle, and today we have a unique episode of Session Share that we're calling the Roundtable Discussion. I'm joined today by Peter Prickett and Rob Porter. Rob, how are you doing today?
I'm not too bad. I had quite a productive Sunday. We've just taken over a college program, and six of the lads were playing against each other today, so I went along and watched. So yeah, it was good getting a bit of football in the sunshine. I'm certainly not complaining.
Happy days. Yeah, I was out coaching myself today. I actually coached both of my teams playing against each other. So it kind of felt like playing chess against myself. You know what I mean? So, how's your day been, Peter?
All good, thanks. Yeah, did a little bit of writing, and that was about it for today. So, yeah, not bad. Could be worse.
Fantastic. So, the reason for this podcast is to discuss the new changes that are coming into grassroots game in England, thanks to the latest FA initiative. By the 2029-30 season, our U7 players will begin their grassroots career playing in a 3v3. The U8s and U9s will be 5v5. U10 and U11 will play at 7v7, and U12 and U13 will be 9v9. So that means by the age of U14 will be the first time teams will experience the 11v11 model. Peter, you were previously on the podcast right towards the start of when Session Share began, and you talked about the benefits of the 3v3 model as development for players in the future. So, can I get your initial reactions to what you felt when you heard the news?
Um, about time. Obviously, that was my main thought. Is first of all, yes, I'm really glad that we're doing it. Delighted that we're doing it. It's just taken so long. It doesn't do much to change that feeling that I think a lot of people have that within England and within the FA, change takes longer than everyone feels like it should. And there are reasons for the slowness of change. I've spoken to people at the FA and I know that they wanted to make sure that it was as close to bulletproof as possible before making the announcement and before rolling it out, which is what delays things. Um, they have to be seen to have done the research themselves, whereas I can use other people's research to back up my own arguments, but I'm not the FA. I don't have to have done my own research, and they do, and that has slowed things down for them. So yes, as much as it's like about time, just generally brilliant. It's there. It's coming. It's in the program officially. The first steps are being made towards something that undoubtedly will help in not just player development but player engagement as well.
And Rob, what did you think?
I was lucky enough. I can't remember, it was a while ago. I was at St George's Park and I had a sneak sort of. They had a kind of little trial event going on, so I've kind of seen firsthand kind of what the product kind of probably is going to look like. So I've kind of known it was in the sort of pipe work for a while as well. Same as Peter, I'm absolutely ecstatic. If I'm perfectly honest, I think it's a great step forward. The 3v3 side and just the small formats all the way through. I'm just as ecstatic about the kind of going to 11v11 at under 14. I think it could even go a year back, to be honest with you, and go under 15. But yeah, that side of it is really good. So I think the whole thing from start to finish, I think is a really positive step forward.
Yeah, for me, I would agree with both of you and what Peter said earlier about it's been a long time coming. I know like this sort of model has been used in Spain, it's been used in Germany for many years, and it seems like England's kind of catching up about time. I think the idea behind it is an exceptionally good one because at the end of the day, you're going to be maximizing touches of players, maximizing involvement in games. The biggest thing that for me, and I'm glad, Peter, you alluded to it, the fact that the FA have done their research and they waited for this initiative to come, because I feel the biggest thing that's going to harm this and harm player development is in the execution. The ideas can all be very well and good, but when it comes to the actual execution of the event, that could be the one that harms it the most, and it could harm years of development for English football then. So we literally hope that the FA have done their research and can move forward in the correct manner. So with every new initiative, as I say, there is always backlash. What issues have you heard that coaches have been concerned about, and do you feel like you have any solutions already for those type of questions? Rob, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think having sort of read a lot of the stuff on social media and kind of posted quite a bit about it myself, I think the one thing the FA could have done a little bit quicker is got the kind of the logistics side of it out there a little bit quicker, because I think there is a webinar coming up. So I think it's the unknown. I think still for a lot of coaches of actually how does it look like, because there's a lot of coaches who've been saying, "Oh, we're going to need X amount of extra coaches. We're going to need so many more pitches. We need, and actually in reality, it doesn't work like that. You need the same amount of coaches. So if you've got a squad of 10, rather than having one 5v5 and five subs, you'd have, potentially three lots of 3v3 and one sub. So you wouldn't need any more coaches. You just need, you can use the same 5v5 pitch and split it up into mini pitches. So yeah, I think if they got the logistics side out a little bit quicker, I think it would have probably helped a few people who are kind of a bit in the dark and maybe kind of clutching at, some issues that actually probably don't exist. And I think the other thing for me is just the fact that some coaches are going to have to let go of a little bit of control potentially, where it's going to be more the role of facilitating kids playing. Because there was one coach's response was, "Well, if there's more than one game going on, how can I coach them all? How can I see them all playing at once?" It's like you don't necessarily need to.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Yeah, Peter, what did you do for it?
Yeah, it's always interesting seeing what the responses are, and some of it is genuine concerns about pitch hire and the state of pitches, but sometimes like the pitches issue and the general how good are our pitches is not a 3v3. It's not a format problem. It's not a format problem. It's a general issue that's got nothing to do with the format. So those problems about pitches being of a good enough standard is a whole other thing. Um, do they have the pitches? Well, as I've said to many people, if you've got a five-a-side pitch, you've got 3v3 pitches sitting there immediately. So it doesn't take a lot of imagination to figure that one out. And then the cost of goals, which does require a little bit of being sensible and common sense. If for some reason it's written into the rules and laws that every club must have 4 top end bazooka goals for every single game that they're playing, so that would require 2 5-a-side pitches. That's 8 bazooka goals they have to go out and buy, which could cost in the region of £800. Yeah, that's a problem. But I'm pretty certain that there will be clubs will be allowed to choose what type of pop-up goal that they use and however much that costs. And also, if people remember back to when we switched to 5v5, there was money available to grassroots clubs to help them purchase the goals. So I am going to make the leap of faith and assume that the FA will be doing the same thing again to help alleviate some of those costs. And there's always costs in running football teams. There's always costs with goals. But yes, it does create a sudden panic of we've got to find all this money to buy these goals. Well, you might not have to find quite as much money as you imagine you do. So that's some of the stuff on the practical level. And in terms of other things that I heard, again, it's like that. Is this really a problem, or is it clutching at straws? To some people saying, is there a danger that there'll be more individualism and less team play? Well, if there is, brilliant. That's what we'd like, actually. But you've got to think what the age group is. It's under 7. They are not exactly sharers of the football anyway. They have that tunnel vision. They have that, I've got the ball, I'm going to go and play. I'm going to go and take people on. And that's what we want. We want them to get the ball, get more opportunities to do that each. So that's, I think, a problem that's not a problem. And then there was another person who I saw suggesting that we might not be giving the players the tactical knowledge that they need if they're not playing 5v5 straight away. And I think that that's a misunderstanding of the difference between tactics and principles, because it's an invasion game. It's a 3v3 is a scaled version of the 11v11 game. Both are invasion games. So the general principles of play, apart from maybe one or two, will be in full effect, and the others will be in partial effect, no matter the size of the game. And those principles, practicing those principles earlier, will help them in the longer run.
Yeah, you bring up some really good points, and I've heard a lot of the same sort of arguments, and I'm just going to go through a few of them. One, you mentioned about money, and obviously, money impacts everything that we do. We all coach, but we don't coach for free. You know what I mean? We have to be paid. With the places that we rent have to be paid for. The fields that we need to go, we need to get dog food, for example, and stuff like that. So yeah, everything costs money. So that is a genuine concern. However, one thing I see from this initiative, it's not as if like the FA is saying it has to be done tomorrow. It's a grandfathered effect into this project. The fact that the actual 3v3 model won't be starting until 2027-28 season. So clubs have time to invest and develop like that. And also, as what you said there, Peter, there will be funding. Well, we believe there will be funding. We're not confirming that just yet. So I think that's a valid concern, but I think there is already options in how to get players to do that. Facilities is a big one. I know a lot of people in England have moaned about the fact that the pitches get waterlogged and we miss loads of games all over the season. But that problem would be happening anyway. So we've got to kind of address that, whether it's 3v3 or 11v11. We've got to address the fact that the facilities need to improve, need to get better. The more we shift towards a lesser players on the field, I think it will naturally make our practices, our sessions, more technically driven than tactical driven, because we take the ego off the coach away a little. And I think now we're focusing more on the player, which, let's be honest, for the most of the mature coaches, that's what we do. We're taking, but we try and educate those younger coaches now with less players on the field, maybe less stress, less thought about winning matters at all costs. So we're now more of the technical game. And I a lot of my experience comes from coaching in America. That's where I'm based now. And I've been talking to a lot of coaches over here, because I honestly, if it's a success in England, I expect this to be over here within 3 to 5 years. Exact same sort of thing in order to go. And some of the coaches over here have talked to me about, and from my own knowledge, I watch like U13 boys and girls play all the time. And in America, we do 7v7 at U9, U10, 9v9 at 11 and 12, and then 13 and above, it's 11v11. And I always see it every year. We have a really good U12 team that's doing everything, like switching the point of attack, overlapping fullbacks, all the business like that. Even like to the point where you've got some teams playing a false nine and really understanding tactical play as well as doing technical gifted. However, once they go to U13, because the field shift from a 9v9 to 11v11 is so so vast, I should say. We lose that initial bit now of now fullbacks can't overlap because they can't cover the distance of the field. We don't see switches at the point of attack because it takes them a week and a half to get from one side of the field to the other. And it literally takes them at least 6 months to grow into that 11v11 model. So I love the fact that it's a more of a steady increment because now, like as Rob said earlier, it's going to be U14 when it goes to 11v11, and even pushing that up to U15, which is like high school age over here. I think that would be a real step forward for player development. Rob, anything to add on that after Pete and I talk?
Yeah, I just say I've just adding to that other bit in terms of you're saying the 11v11 bit. The worst bit of that is for the goalkeepers. They get to under 13s and gone from a 9-a-side goal, which they're still actually quite small, into an 11v11 goal, and it's just absolutely vast. And I think the other thing kind of comes into play is actually the technical teams kind of then potentially struggle for a little while because it's actually the physically dominant teams, the early kind of maturers who actually take over for a while. But no, I think we've kind of covered everything. I think as I said, the main thing for me is actually it's going to be interesting to see coaches having to potentially take a step back and actually being more of a facilitator of play rather than a coach who's under sevens who wants to be Pep, who wants to try to get their team to play tiki taka. So I think there's lots of benefits all around.
Fantastic stuff. We're just going to have a short break and we'll be back to talk more about the Future Fit program that the FA is introducing. Do you have a story to tell that the world needs to hear? Have you struggled with reaching new audiences who are engaged with your story? It might be time for you to start a podcast. Let me tell you about a platform we use here at Session Share. Zencastr makes it super easy to produce a high quality broadcast with 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes ums, ahs, you knows, and 22 other speech patterns. Zencastr makes it super easy to produce a podcast that sounds great. Ready to tell your story? Check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. Welcome back, and we're here talking about the new Football Association's grassroots initiative called Future Fit. I'm a big fan of the idea, sure, as you can see from what we've spoke about so far. And we all know that some ideas are great. However, as I mentioned earlier, it's the execution that will make or break it. Let's start with Peter. Peter, what do you feel will be the biggest thing the FA needs to focus on to ensure this works as well as they hope?
There's a few things, but biggest thing is quite a difficult one to pin down. So I'm just going to go with some things that jump to mind. Conversations I've had, we have to make sure that the FA have to make sure that when they write out the rules and the laws, they reference what you do with additional players. So what I mean is if you're going to a 3v3 and someone's got 5 and someone's got 4, what doesn't happen, and I think it's critical that this doesn't happen, is that another player is added in and you play 4v4 with one substitute. The reason I think it's so important is, first of all, it will detract from the main point of actually doing 3v3. But if you don't address it, what will happen, because although the laws, the formats have been changed to slow the race to 11v11, people still want to take that race on. So they will just turn up with additional players with a view to, we can play 4v4 because the laws say with extra players we can do that. So I think it needs to be really clear that you've got 3v3, you've got 2 spare players, they go and play a 2v2 or 2 1v1s or whatever, however they want to be precise on that. But it has to be there that you do not throw an extra player on.
Peter, you you've obviously written many books on 3v3. You've got like a workshop coming up with Ray Power recently, and we'll talk about that in a little bit to make sure people can benefit from it. A lot of people talk about the benefits of 4v4, and you've mentioned there about ensuring that we don't add that extra player in and keeping it 3v3 based on the FA model. With the 4v4, where people talk about width, depth, and height being like that diamond shape and everything like that, why is it so important that the players play 3v3 instead?
So you will still get the width and depth. You'll still get width and depth and height, but you'll have to move to create it. Whereas I think if you're playing 4v4, you can have the width, depth, and height, and you don't have to move. That's quite an important factor. But I'm not doing down 4v4 in terms of its technical returns, because you get plenty of very, very good technical returns. What you are sacrificing is the basic maths. So ball ratio of 8-1 versus a ball ratio of 6-1, the opportunities are lower for each player to get meaningful game actions. That's the most important thing. And the reason why 3v3 is better than 2v2 is because you still get the width and the depth and the height on the move. And it's the smallest format that affords those players the most opportunities to actually execute themselves, but also will include the majority, and I say the majority because there's a few things that you can't execute in small-sided games, but the majority of core and key moves in the game. And if 3v3, well, if we have a look at the FA's core moves, the 2v2 moves are there, and the two-player moves, and the three-player moves are obviously going to be there. And those two-player moves and three-player moves are relevant all the way up to 11v11.
I'm so glad I asked that, because the 4v4 model is something I've always used all the time, but I totally agree with you. The fact that you actually end up with positions where people get stagnant, then, if you will, like you have a centre forward, two midfielders, and a defender. They stay in those diamond shape and think they're doing the right thing. But as you say, it then limits their decision making. They get less height naturally, like from movement. So I really appreciate you taking time to answer that question.
And
Rob, so
also with sorry,
no,
also
you
with we're only talking under 7. That's also an
Mhm.
important point here.
Yeah,
We're only talking under 7. You can do. There's no reason to not do 4 versus 4, but at under 7, it's probably not the best thing for them to do. Under 8, maybe under 9, under 10. Why not do 4v4? Why not do 5v5? Why not do 3v3 for that variety? So I've always made sure I don't say you should never use these formats. You should only ever use 3 versus 3, because that's not the case. But at certain ages and with certain needs, it will fit better. And I think the decision's been made that under 7, it's a better fit, certainly than 5v5.
fantastic. I agree. I don't think there should be any absolutes, as if to say you should never play 4v4, 5v5. There's definitely opportunities to do that within player development. So 100% agree with you there. So, Rob, what do you feel is the biggest thing the FA need to focus on?
I think for me, it's winning hearts and minds. It's actually trying to win over those who are the doubters. I do believe they're going to be kind of rolling out road shows and CPD events, and I'm sure hopefully they'll be put together kind of a good sort of social media run as well of the positives. And I think that's the main thing for me is, once you've got the logistics out, I think that will help. I think there still will be some doubters, but I think there will always be some doubters. There's, as sort of Pete alluded to, there's always that race to get to 11v11, because that's what this coaches see on TV. They might have watched Man U versus Fulham this afternoon, and that's kind of that's what they want to get towards, which is fine. But at the end of the day, under sevens isn't Man United against Fulham, and so yeah, I think if they can win over a lot of those coaches and kind of show actually why they're doing it and sort of get everything across, I think that's probably the main thing for me.
I agree. I actually wrote on my notes that they wanted people to buy into it. So I think like coaches, players, parents in particular need to buy into this model in order to make it successful. There was a video when I think the FA went to 7v7 or 9v9 not too long ago, where they got a bunch of adults on and they scaled the field based on how a 7-year old would be if they were playing 11v11. And it was like the field was like 3 miles wide and something like that. And it was taking them forever to kick the ball down. And it was a video, you can find it on YouTube. And it just showed the fact that to those players, like, wow, we're doing this to these kids. No wonder they're not enjoying the game because it takes forever and a day to get from one goal to the other. So I think stuff like that, the FA need to educate as much as possible, as in like, this is not just because it's the flavor of the month. It's not just because Spain and Germany are doing it. This is the benefit. This is why we're doing it. And this is where we expect our players to be in 5-10 years if we achieve this model.
Definitely.
So we're just going to take one more small break and we'll be back to continue. Do you need fresh ideas for your football, soccer training? Then follow Session Share on YouTube and X. Our handles can be found in the show description. Session Share, for coaches, by coaches. Welcome back. And as we continue to discuss the new initiative from the FA, I'm interested to get your take on what coaches, clubs, and academies can do in preparation for this. Let's start with you, Rob.
I think for me, it's start getting the ball rolling, especially in terms of your sessions. Doing a lot more 3v3 as a coach. Kind of start actually letting go a little bit of the fact that actually you've got to be in control of every sort of little thing, every sort of detail. And I would have said, obviously, get some of Peter's resources as well, as a little plug for him there, so he doesn't have to do it himself. But no, I said, like, get your head round it. I'm sure there'll be there's CPD events coming up. There'll be a lot of stuff coming out from the FA. So just start getting on board with the program and get your head round it and start working towards it.
And what's your thoughts, Peter?
Yeah, it's hard for people to be critical. They can't really be critical if they don't have an understanding of what they're being critical of. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, in order, even if they are a doubter and you're yet to be turned from a doubter to a believer, you still have to actually see what it is that you're putting your doubts into. So if you don't believe in the format, that's probably an even bigger reason to go and see as much of it as possible. And at the minute, that's probably going to be going to the FA webinars or any other webinars or online events that are being hosted by people such as myself. And then just doing as much research as you can. I'm get the Horst Vein books. Horst started it many years ago, you know, and if you read his stuff, it will help you to understand what the benefits are. But if you're more academically minded, there are papers out there that you can easily find that explain why smaller formats and smaller sided games are effective. Have a read. Now, I know that's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but it might be the cup of tea for some. And yeah, practice it. Practice it yourself. Do a test event. Try. If you're someone who thinks it's going to be really difficult to manage two games, well, try having two 3v3 games going on in training and see if you can split your attention. Try it having the players manage their own substitutions when you've got a 3v3 game and there's two players doing 1v1. See if the players can manage it. Try these things out and you can get a feel for it. Rob talked about education. You've also talked about the education. It is really important that the education is out there. And there are some things that I think you don't grasp the differences until you actually do it. Like, I used to deliver futsal for the FA on the courses, and one of the things that we made sure that the people who came on the courses did was play a game of futsal, because then you could actually feel the difference between playing on the hard surface with the different ball and the speed of the game. And then that thought that people are going, oh, it's just indoor five-a-side. And like, oh no, it's not. Geez, the speed of this thing, it's different. And it's the same sort of thing's going to happen with 3v3. I think that if they are delivering courses for people to understand 3 versus 3, people need to play it as well as see it. And then they'll start to really feel the benefits and the differences. I think that's going to be important.
100% agree. I agree mainly with the practice and try, because at the end of the day, as you said, if you try something, then you have a better understanding. Then you might be pro, then you might be against, but at least you were open minded enough to give it a chance and see how it will go. And I think all three of us have mentioned it to the hills and back now about education being real big key, getting people on board, making sure they understand it. And with that in mind, Peter, I know Rob and I have mentioned it a couple of times, and it's now time for that shameless plug, if you will. But it's not just a shameless plug. It is literally something that I feel would be extremely beneficial for people that do want to learn more about this. Peter, tell us a little bit about your webinar coming up and the 3v3 books that you actually have.
Yeah, well, the books are probably the easiest. Developing Skill 2, and then 3v3 Inspired by Legends. They're not just lists of games and practices. There's a lot of explanation of why it's an important format, and hopefully that will help people to understand it even more. And then Ray Power and I are getting together, and it's not that far away now. Monday the 10th of March at 7:30 p.m. UK time for an hour and a half to chat 3v3, and I'm going to be going in great depth into the benefits of 3v3, and a little bit on formats, but only in terms of what the possible formats might be. The FA are doing their own webinars, and hopefully, and this is what we don't know, hopefully they will do the big reveal about this is what the format's going to be. A little tidbit, and based on the discussions that I had with people, what we see in the first year of 3v3 as formats may not be what we get in year 2 and 3. That's something that the doubters might have to think about, that just because they don't like what they're seeing right now, that might not be what they see a bit later. But anyway, yes, 10th of March, that's when Ray and I are doing the webinar, and it's going to go a deep dive into benefits of 3v3.
Fantastic stuff. Thank you so much, Rob and Peter, for joining us today. Rob and Peter are friends of the show, and we will make sure to put their socials in our podcast description so all the listeners can follow them. Also, we'll put Peter's books and the webinar as a link in the podcast description just to make it easier for everyone. Be sure to get in touch across all our socials to offer your opinions on everything we've discussed today. We'd love to hear your thoughts on all that we have discussed. This has been Session Share, the Coaches Podcast. Thank you for listening, and thank you for coaching the beautiful game.